Шановні колеги, наша серія прес-брифінгів в Українському кризовому медіа-центрі триває. Вітаю всіх, хто доєднався до нас зараз.
Welcome to everyone who joined us, and I would like to invite Mr. Lysenko from the updated information from ATO zone. Сьогодні мало. Good day, dear colleagues. As of 9th of September 2014, despite the regime of ceasefire, the situation on the territory of Donetsk and Lugansk regions is still tense. The combatants violate the achieved agreements and in some places continue shelling of the positions of the ATO forces. Ukrainian military sticking to the conditions of ceasefire and shell only in response. Our military are now fortifying the lines and they restore the battle potential of the troops. The most dangerous situation is near Donetsk airport, Debaltsevo, Severodonetsk, Chastya, Fashchivka, Avdiivka. The fact of violating ceasefire by terrorists near Shastya is fixed by the observers of OSCE. From the beginning of declaring the regime of ceasefire from 6 p.m. on the 5th of September till 6 in the morning today, the terrorists and Russian military did 89 shellings of the positions of ATO forces. Yesterday, the checkpoints of ATO forces were shelled near Donetsk, Kamyshuch-Vacha, and Debaltsevo. During the working trip to Donetsk region, the President Poroshenko also visited the United Staff of ATO in Mariupol when talking to the military of the brigades of the National Guard, 2 battalions of territorial defense and border guards in Mariupol. He mentioned that servicemen have to be ready for defense. We know our enemy well. We know the price for his words. I have no illusions as to our enemy, but I have hope, said the President of Ukraine. In his speech to the servicemen, the President also mentioned that it is important to maintain the military spirit, and it is important to understand that no one but us will defend Ukraine. The President awarded 50 warriors of ATO with the state awards, the orders of Bogdan Khmelnytsky of different degree, medals for courage and for military service, and 1 order, Golden Star, awarding the title of Hero of Ukraine, was awarded to those who, risking their lives, continue to defend Mariupol and peace and our liberated cities. You see the photograph. The ceasefire allowed to activate the process of freeing hostages. In general, according to the information of the General Staff of Ukraine, 648 persons are liberated, and the work is going on liberating 500 hostages more. The President Poroshenko had a phone conversation with the President of Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, to coordinate actions on supporting, maintaining the regime of ceasefire. It has been mentioned that it is important to continue efficient monitoring of the regime of ceasefire by mission of OSCE. During the visit to Mariupol, the President stated also that the reasons for heavy losses during ATO will be carefully examined and analyzed, not to repeat that in the future. Those who are guilty will not avoid punishment, said the President. At the same time, the President said that the decisions will be well balanced, and he, as the Commander-in-Chief, will not allow to punish non-innocent. Also, the military prosecutor is investigating the fact of encircling the military near Alavaisk. The investigation as part of criminal procedure, according to Part 3 of Article 425 of Criminal Code, continues. The investigators study how these operations were planned and executed. The military tactical expertise is appointed, which will provide answer as to the correctness of making decisions by the commandership of ATO forces. The checkpoint of the National Guard near Slaviana Serbs is reinforced by additional equipment and personnel of the armed forces of Ukraine. Ukrainian military strengthened the defense of the positions at the checkpoint. At the checkpoint, the terrorists and Russian military also reinforced their position. Between the sides, there is neutrality preserved. Ukrainian military do not react to provocations. They continue to protect and defend their positions. Situation at the border. Using the ceasefire, some militants are trying to run away, get away from the places of battles. Yesterday, at 12 o'clock, the raid group along the road Talakivka-Kominterna near Mariupol discovered the left Tavria truck by the terrorists that had a tank machine gun. With executive actions of the armed forces of Russian Federation on the border with Ukraine and on the temporary occupied territory of Crimea. In Mariupol's Taganrog directions, the concentration of the armed forces of Russian Federation continues. According to operational information, starting from the 7th of September, along the road Rostov-na-Donu-Novozovsk, in the direction of Ukraine, 2 convoys of equipment went. The total number was 172 units of Caterpillar vehicles, 30 PCRs, and 200 trucks. Near Kuybyshevo of Russian Federation, the unit of Russian anti-aircraft defense is deployed, which controls the airspace of the eastern part of Lugansk and southern part of Donetsk regions. As to situation in settlements, on the territories temporarily under the control of the combatants, terrorists do active filtration measures. In Lugansk checkpoints, the combatants check with the list the passport data of residents who go back to the city. In Rovinki, Vatrotsitivsky district of Lugansk region, the combatants go to residential apartments to check the registration of people who live there. If they find out that the citizens are not registered in Lugansk region, the terrorists detain them for unidentified time. As of today, on the territories under control of combatants, 25 medical establishments in Donetsk and 20 in Lugansk region stopped working. During the last day, the Emergency Service of Ukraine demined 4.2 hectares of territory, also demined 136 units of explosive, out of them 76 artillery cartridges, 13 grenades, and 47 other explosives. The total area demined in Donbass is 1,047 hectares. And 829 facilities of social infrastructure are checked whether there are explosives there. Yesterday, starting from 2 o'clock in Kramatorsk, the radio renewed the radio station renewed the broadcasting of Ukrainian channels 1+1 and 10. European Union approved the package of further sanctions against Russia, which will become efficient during the next few days, depending on whether the ceasefire conditions are observed. The President of the Council of Europe, German Van Rompuy, stated that, depending on the development of the situation, the EU is ready to review the approved sanctions partially or completely. Direct participation of Russia in Ukrainian conflict is very, very obvious. That was stated by the Chancellor of Germany, Angela Merkel. According to her, actions of Russia cannot be left without consequences, and sanctions are the only way of pressure on it. At the same time, added Angela Merkel, German government has no doubts that the military way is not able to resolve the conflict. The Chancellor of Germany also says that the sanctions are the only possibility to influence Russia that supports separatists in Ukraine. The Minister of Foreign Affairs of Canada, John Bird, threatened by strengthening the sanctions against Russia if the ceasefire is not continued in Donbass. He said that Canada is very skeptical towards the readiness of Russia to influence the de-escalation of the conflict. The Speaker of the State Department of U.S., Jen Psaki, recognized that not all 12 items of protocol signed on the 5th of September in Minsk are executed, but this will be the subject of discussions as part of trilateral format. Ukraine, Russia, SCE. The head of the Foreign Ministry of Czech Republic, Lubomir Zaoralek, informed about the intentions of Czech Republic to help Ukraine to restore Donbass. As is mentioned, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Czechia approved 5 humanitarian projects directed towards helping Ukrainians who were wounded or had to leave their houses. The Prime Minister of Great Britain, David Cameron, stated that London will continue to provide financial assistance to Kiev, first of all, to enhance efficiency of operational management of armed forces of Ukraine, and emphasized again the support of Ukraine, its sovereignty, territorial integrity. Besides, during the telephone conversation with the General Secretary of UN, Ban Ki-moon, the head of the British government stated the necessity of involving additional observers to Ukrainian-Russian border. David Cameron stated that actions of Russia and Ukraine are illegal and not acceptable, and that UN has to continue exercise pressure on President Putin. The assistant to the UN General Secretary on Human Rights, Ivan Shimonovich, said the terrorists in the east of Ukraine continue to detain peaceful population on the territories which are under their control to get the ransom, to force them to work and exchange for combatants which are detained by Ukrainian military. According to UN, the militants now detain about 460 hostages. The head of OSCE, Didier Burkhalter, said that 59 experts are sent to Ukraine to monitor the execution of the regime of ceasefire, and he does not exclude the possibility to involve into the process of observation the drones. The OSCE informed that the regime of ceasefire in the east of Ukraine in general is observed. Now your questions.
Сподіваємося, що це працює. Запитання, будь ласка.
Your questions, please. Good afternoon. There was an information about the liberation of hostages. Can you explain about the conditions and about those 5,000 of people who have still to be liberated? What will be their conditions for their liberation? You know that we do not release any information about the conditions upon which the hostages are released, and we will continue to inform you about the final liberation of those who will be liberated. Inter TV channel, could you please provide information? Director of the military medical department provided information that there were 4 people who were slandered during the ceasefire. During the latest day, there are no slender people, while from the ceasefire, there were 5 people slandered and 33 Ukrainian servicemen wounded. This is combined information of all the agencies participating in ATO.
From Cadena Ser. I would like to understand if you make a difference between hostages and prisoners, because yesterday President Poroshenko talked about 1,200 hostages. Today you are also talking about hostages. Are there prisoners, or in the agreement there was said that there must be an exchange of prisoners? Those persons are part of this agreement, or there is another group of different prisoners?
Thank you for question.
Thank you for your question. There was an explanation about that number, 1,200 people who are considered to be hostages. President Poroshenko mentioned the word prisoners just to make it simpler for ordinary people to understand clearly that these are hostages, both military men and civil people who are actually hostages. Since we do not have officially declared war with Russia, then we do not use the term war prisoners in our official rhetoric. That is why when people are kidnapped or detained by our enemies, we call them hostages, or they are seized, we call them hostages, detainees. And when people are seized, we call them hostages. When people when we seize people in course of combat and we seize them with weapon, with guns, etc., then they are detainees, and then we have an investigation about them.
You talked about the movement of Russian military units inside Russia. Could you just confirm which direction they're moving in? Are they moving towards Ukraine or away from Ukraine? And do you have any information about the movement of any military equipment from the territory of Ukraine to Russia? Thank you.
Thank you for question.
Thank you for your question. We have information that there were two convoys, columns of convoy, which were moving from the territory of Russian Federation to the territory of Ukraine. We know that there is a rotation of the military units of Russian Federation which are located in the territory of Ukraine. But we have no information that there are any Russian military units or the gang groups which quit from Ukrainian territory to Russia.
Three things. One, the Russians said that they were worried about a buildup of Ukrainian military forces in the east. Are you building up your forces there, and how do you react to that? Two, is there any reaction to the preliminary report about the downing of the plane that was just released in The Hague, saying it was brought down by sharp objects? And three, how many hostages or detainees has Ukraine returned to Russia, and how many do you plan to? Thank you.
Скільки Україна? Could you please repeat your second question? The second. We do not have exact information about numbers of hostages which are with the terrorists. We do not give information about how many detained people we exchange to hostages. That is the information which is classified, and that is the security service that is working on that. In this case, we're interested in the result as to return of our citizens who illegally are held there. And that is true. We include Nadia Savchenko into that, which is now on the territory of Russian Federation, and Russian authorities consider her to be prisoner. And two more. One question was about Russia accusing Ukraine that we are bringing more forces on the border with Russia. Is that so? More than 100 kilometers of the section of Ukrainian-Russian border is under the control of terrorists and combatants and the units of Russian Federation, and it's clear that physically we cannot bring more of our forces there. As to other sections of the control of the border which are under the control of Ukrainian forces, there are forces and equipment concentrated that monitor the movement of Russian units, and they are there in case of possible aggression from Russian Federation. We are not concentrating any forces there. Everyone is at their positions, and is here.
What was exactly the question? Can you please repeat?
Was there official reaction to what the Dutch said about
Чи є вже офіційна реакція української сторони?
Is there a reaction? We don't have this information yet. As soon as we get it, we'll inform.
Today there will be a press briefing of Volodymyr Groysman, the head of the Government Commission on MH17, so you can address all your questions about Ukrainian reaction towards the Dutch report and any other report to him, most likely. Thank you.
Є ще питання українською?
Any more questions? Again, the question about 1,200 liberated hostages. Yesterday, the president said that 1,200 were liberated, and today there's this figure of 648. There was an explanation that that was a misspelling, and this figure was updated. No more questions. Thank you. The next briefing will be at 5, and our National Security and Defense Council will be at 5, and our next briefing will start shortly.